Hey guys, what's up? It's Flux with fluxwithit.com, and today I got something pretty cool in the lab. It is the new Arturia Microbrute SE. Now, you may know that I'm a big fan of the Mini Brute and Microbrute series, as I've done a couple of tips and tricks videos on the Mini Brute and showing them linked together. Arturia's come out with a new range of Microbrute, the SE model, that comes in different color ranges. Now, let's go ahead and open this up and see what we get with this model. So we'll just go ahead and pry her open. Alright, first thing that we notice when we open up the box is we get a cool gig bag. So that's pretty cool. The gig bag has slots in it so that you can put, your paperwork in here, patch cables, power cord, all that good stuff. What else we have in here? Let's open this up. We've got our manual, all right, and it's got our registration info on there. We've got our preset sheets, okay, so those of you who are maybe new to synthesis or want to just jump right into it, you can go into these preset sheets here and take a look at it, and let's see what these look like. Quite a few of them in here. So we get all these preset sheets. Now these white ones here, these ones allow you to take like a, you could do it permanent or you could do it as a dry erase or even a wet erase marker, and you can mark out where your knob settings are so that you can kind of patch save basically, so a lot of us like to use like a digital camera to save patches. Well, you can also do it with this and just lay it right on top of the synthesizer. It's got slots for the knobs and faders and everything, and you can just put it right on there. You'll see these. So, all right, let's put these away and we'll take a look at what else is in the box here. Now, of course, you're going to have yourself a power cord. So that comes in its own little box here. So the power cord comes like so, and of course you hook up this cable. All right, and we also get two patch cables. Now what's cool about these patch cables is these are actually stackable patch cables. So if you're familiar with modular synthesizers or even older synthesizers like the old banana jack style synthesizers, they used to have jumpable cables where you can plug a cable into the other cable. So anytime you plug into a socket with this, it's always still open, and then you can just jack right into it so you can get multiple connections into one place. I'll tell you from having a modular that these types of cables are not cheap, generally running at least about $8 US a pop. So to have two of those right here in the box is pretty darn cool if you ask me. That's a big step up from the simple short orange ones that they used to have in there. And here we are. So let's go ahead and pull this guy out, take a look at it. This is the white model. It's a very nice white. The knobs are brilliant white. And let's toss the box down here for a second. And let me get you a nice look at it. Nice and compact. The keys have a nice springy feel to them. Not too hard, not too soft. Feels just like the original Microbrute. The white knobs are really quite nice to look at. White knobs with the black indents on them. They look quite nice. It's a nice layout. So I'm going to hook this up and we're going to take a look at it. We're going to use it with the modular. We're going to use it by itself, and I'm also going to be using it in conjunction with the other brutes that I have, which is another Microbrute and another Mini Brute. One of the great things about these is that they do have external input, audio input. So you can run another synthesizer as a second oscillator. The synth layout on this being that you have a single oscillator, albeit a very complex oscillator, with a sub-oscillator that can be tuned to a fifth. or at least an overtone of a fifth. You know, that's a very complex oscillator, but having a second complete oscillator is very useful, and you can do that using a VST, sending a VST straight away into it and doing it over MIDI, or an analog synthesizer module. You could send it straight into it. If you, I mean, you could just get a single Eurorack oscillator and send it straight into this and be good to go. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's hook it up and check it out. Okay, so what I've got here is I have the Microbrute SE, and it is stacked above a Arturia BeatStep. Now, the reason why I have it paired with the BeatStep, I'll get into a little bit later, but these two work really, really well together, and as you can see, they're kind of a perfect fit for each other size-wise. So, what I want to go over right quick is the oscillator section. So, I touched on it a little bit before about how the oscillator section in the Microbrute is quite complex, and this oscillator has numerous different waveforms on it. Now, we have our sawtooth, our triangle, or our sawtooth, our square, and our triangle. We also have the overtone oscillator here. Now, the overtone is, when it's all the way to the left, it functions as a simple sub-oscillator, which is a square wave that's an octave below this primary square wave, okay? But we can add in a fifth tuning of it as well, so it acts as a second oscillator. That will then, this oscillator will then run into the filter. So these act as mixers basically. So we can increase the volume of each waveform. That mixes into the filter. The filter is a 12 dB Steiner-Parker filter. Now it's 12 dB in low pass mode and high pass mode, and it's a 6 dB bandpass filter. The resonance will self-resonate. You can key track it and play the resonance. And then it also has the brute factor, which is basically a feedback loop on the filter circuit so that you can actually send it back into itself and get some interesting distortion characteristics. Coming down here, we have the control section. The control section allows us to add glide or portamento to our keyboard here. Also, we can add that to the sequencer. There's an LFO amount and cutoff. So this is for the mod wheel, and you can select whether you want the filter cutoff to be controlled by the mod wheel or the LFO amount. The LFO is over here. Now, it can be clocked to your MIDI device. So if you have MIDI plugged into the USB here, you can clock it to your DAW or your drum machine or whatever you're using, or you can let it run free. We have an amount knob for our LFO, and then we have our wave section for the LFO. We've got square wave up top, we've got sawtooth, and then we've got triangle. We also have our envelope over here, our envelope amount. You can use the VCA off of either the envelope here or just off of a gate. A gate is just going to be on or off. All right. Now, the envelope section gives us traditional ADSR settings, attack, decay, sustain, release. And then we have the sequencer. The sequencer gives us 8 different patterns. You can also store patterns using the MIDI software for the Microbrute and Minibrute. And we have our rate knob. Again, this can clock to MIDI, or you can let it run free. When you're inputting your notes, you can use the tap tempo button here as a rest function. So right now, the way that this is set up out of the box is the patterns will only play when you hold down a key. You can also use the software to set it up so that as soon as you press this on, the patterns will just continually run. So let's listen to how that sounds right now. What we'll do is we'll take everything back here. We have the filter all the way open, resonance down, brute factor down, keyboard tracking down, envelope is off. So very straightforward. Let's go ahead and hear the sawtooth wave. Now I have a few rests programmed into this this pattern here, and again, the way we did that is just by, as we record the pattern, we just tap the rest function. So if I want to record a pattern, all I have to do is slide this down to record and start inputting notes. and then I press it up to play, and depending on which note I hold down will transpose the sequence. Now we can blend in different waveforms. Of course, you can go old school with this as well. You can just, you know, if you wanted to not mess with any of the software, you could just hold it down like so with a card or anything in between a key and keep the gate on. As we mess with the envelope section, so the VCA is very snappy on this, and the envelopes are as well. Now another nice thing about this is that with having this, this sub oscillator over here with the fifths, you can use the patch bay to actually simulate the sub oscillator being more like a traditional real oscillator, standalone oscillator, getting the drift and everything along with it. Now traditionally a sub oscillator isn't going to drift from your primary oscillator, but because we have the fifth tuning here, what we can do is, let's say I want to plug the LFO into the sub setting here. I can have, let's say I set the sub down like so, okay? Now I'm going to have LFO all the way down for now, and if I turn this up, now you can hear that sub oscillator. Okay, now what I can do is I can bring up the amount, and that's going to start turning this knob for us without us having to do it using control voltage. So let's take a listen. And let's go ahead and do this the old school way. Now if we go ahead and just hold this down, you can listen to the way that it'll sound like the oscillator is beating. So you get that kind of slight drift sound that you would get from a traditional 2 oscillator setup, 2 or 3 oscillator setup. And then when you add in another oscillator, the primary, so it gives you that pseudo drift, which is kind of nice. And of course you can increase or decrease that to your liking. Which is quite nice. Now another really cool thing about this is with having the stackable cables on here, you're free to do some really fun patching. You can use traditional regular patch cables, you know, that aren't stackable, right along with the stackable cables as well. So you can have multiple things being patched in all at once. Now let's go ahead and patch something interesting up. Okay, so this patch right here is, I have the LFO controlling the sub-oscillator's sub-fifth tuning. I also have it coming out and going into pulse width modulation of the primary oscillator. So both of them are now drifting and kind of changing tone a bit. I also have that same LFO is coming out and going into the filter as well by stacking into the other side of that cable. So the filter, pulse width modulation, and sub-oscillator are all being affected by this one LFO. So you're able to get a very interesting thick tone out of that. And that's in bandpass mode there. Let's go to low pass and take a listen. And we can increase the rate, take it up nice and fast. Of course, if we increase the tracking on the keyboard and the resonance, bring the cutoff down a bit. Now, let's pull these out. Another great aspect of it is if you combine it with another piece of gear, such as the Arturia BeatStep, then you can get into external sequencing, external pitch control, gating, lots of just fun techniques of synthesis. So I'm going to set up a patch right now using the pitch output and the gate output of the Arturia BeatStep. Okay, so now I have a very simple patch setup where I'm sending the Arturia BeatStep gate out to the gate input on the back of the Microbrute SE, and I have pitch going into pitch input on the mod matrix up top here. Now I have a stackable cable that I'm using that just isn't plugged in. So the stackable cable is not plugged in because maybe later on I want to do some other weird things that I haven't decided yet, so I use the stackable there just in case. So let's take a listen to what we can do with this. We can do some really old school style sequencing with this. As I twist the knobs down here, it's going to affect the pitch up here. And of course I can change the length of the pattern. I can also change which direction it's playing. Timing. And now I have a random pattern playing. So let's go ahead and get back to that mod matrix and send that into something interesting. I'm going to send that pitch into the filter. And let's turn up that brute factor. send the LFO into the sub. So easily with using a BeatStep and the Microbrute SE, you can get into a lot of fun. Again, that oscillator section is really dense for a single oscillator. I mean, you have the Metalizer, which is essentially a wave shaper and wave folder. You've got pulse width modulation of your square wave. You've got Ultrasaw, which, you know, really just thickens up any saw wave that you send out. Let's hear that real quick. Very cool. And of course you can modulate that. Now, as with the Mini Brute, this section will also allow you to do some overdriving as well. So when you go past 12 o'clock, you can start to get into overdriving territory and kind of make your waveforms clip a little bit, which is quite nice. They actually just kind of softly overdrive. They don't seem to clip hard. They just softly overdrive, which is very nice. And then if you want to get more into the hard clipping, that's when you bring the brute factor in. So overall, the Microbrute SE is just a really great package. I really love the fact that they include the gig bag and the stackable cables. It just makes, it's well worth it. Another great factor about this is that you can use it as a MIDI controller as well. Now these knobs up here are not going to be sending MIDI control, but the keyboard will, the pitch will, and the mod will, as well as the octave buttons up here. So highly recommend you check out a Microbrute SE. If you don't have any analog in your setup and you're curious about getting into an analog synthesizer, I have to say that I think this is probably one of the absolute best deals that you could possibly do to get into analog synthesis. The sound of the oscillator is fantastic. The sound of the filter is fantastic and extremely versatile, having the high pass, band pass, and low pass. The envelopes are very nice and snappy. The VCA sounds clean. The sequencer is nice and flexible. You can really get into it. If you start playing with the glide as you're playing it, you know, you can get into doing things like a slew per notes and, you know, things like that, which you would play live. Just something definitely worth checking out. So this is Flux of fluxwithit.com. Peace.